Hey guys, welcome back to the page. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to be sharing a message with you. You can see by the title of this video, you had to go through this, otherwise nothing would have changed. I was having my quiet time and I felt like the Lord downloaded a message to me, but it didn't feel like it was a message just for me. And I felt like he was saying to make a video about it because it's also for other people as well. And I will just say that not every word is for everybody. You might have stumbled across this video and maybe it is for you, but maybe it's not. So what we always say is maybe the Lord has already been speaking about this to you, and so you seeing it is a confirmation, or you're seeing it for the first time and then therefore you're gonna wanna talk to the Lord and pray about it and ask if this is for you. This is not a particular direction, it's just more of a message that I wanted to share with you guys today. So yeah, again, you had to go through this. If you didn't, nothing would have changed. So I was reading Daniel chapter 4, and this is referring to King Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation and Nebuchadnezzar being restored. So just to give some context, basically King Nebuchadnezzar, he is like a wicked leader in God's sight in terms of being really prideful, idol worshiper, self-righteous. And then obviously when we see the types of acts that he does, it's like, wow, he's super ruthless. He commands Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to all be thrown into a blazing fiery furnace. He ordered these wise men to be torn limb from limb and their house to be laid in ruins, essentially, if people wouldn't follow his commands and different things like that. So you're seeing these really ruthless, wicked, crazy acts. And the last thing that you would imagine this ruler to be doing would be to worship God and to be humble. So in the beginning of Daniel chapter 4, he has a dream. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, and then he has Daniel interpret it. And essentially, Daniel interprets the dream that his kingdom is going to be taken from him, and he's basically going to live like an animal, like a beast of the field, and all of these things. So first, I'm just going to read the part where this actually happened. So it says Nebuchadnezzar's humiliation. So it says, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, and the king answered and said, "Is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty?" While the words were still in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven. "O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like an ox. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will." Immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers and his nails were like bird's claws. Okay, so first reading this is like, yeah, he deserves to be humbled. He's wicked. So I've read this chapter many times and I don't know why, but only the humiliation kind of stood out to me, because I think that when somebody kind of like deserves this downfall, we think, well, yeah, they deserved that. But for some reason, the restoration didn't really stand out to me the way that it did here. And maybe you're thinking like, okay, what does this have to do with what I'm going through? And I am going to explain. Okay, so the last part that I'm going to read is Nebuchadnezzar restored. "At the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to heaven, and my reason returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever." As I'm reading this, just take note of like what type of character he was before and how he is speaking now. "For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are accounted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the host of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say to him, 'What have you done?'" And this is the last part. "At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my lords sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble." So after I read this part, I started journaling, and I don't know why I just got this like crazy revelation, and I felt the Lord just saying to me, like, look at how he was before. Not that God is saying we are in our current state, that like we or you are so wicked and so evil and all these things. We might not be like Nebuchadnezzar. We might not be evil in that way, but there are still things about us that needed to change. Maybe for us, our idol worship is not building a literal 9-foot statue or however tall it was of gold and telling people to worship it, but maybe our idols, as we know, are just simple things. Maybe our idols, the things that we put on pedestals, the things that we care more about God, that we look to for our identity, are things that are very, very common. You know, there's nothing new. We all look to the same things. Our career, maybe we find our identity in our business, our money, our children, our spouse, our lifestyle. Maybe we're in such bondage to materialism, vanity, immodesty, sexual sin, so many different things. So it's not that we are so evil or something like the king, you know, at this stage, but it's just that I felt like the Lord saying to me, look at his character, look at who he was before. There's nothing that could have changed him. In our human minds, like in my human mind, seeing somebody like that, nothing would have made him change. Why would he ever, with the way that he was speaking, why would he ever worship God? Why would he ever be humbled? Why would he ever have a new godly outlook on life? Unless something to this degree that would humble him to this degree would happen to him. God could not have gotten a hold of him. He could have not changed him unless he went through something like this. And I felt like God was saying what is impossible with man is possible with God. So he's living like a literal animal in the field, eating grass. I think for 7 years, it says for 7 periods. Unfortunately, I can't use my phone to check this because I'm recording on my phone, but if somebody knows, either way, it's a long period of time to have this happen. And imagine that type of wilderness season. Imagine that type of torment of living in that way. Like imagine if we were cast into the field and we lived like literal animals and we turned into some type of almost like an animal. And you know, obviously that's not our literal wilderness season. Maybe our wilderness season is going through health challenges. As you guys know, that's something that I've been going through. Maybe it's lack of provision and you've been struggling with debt and not being able to make an income for years. Maybe you are struggling with not being able to find a career, or you're just having failure after failure. Maybe you've been single and lonely for a long time, or you've been going through a divorce or anxiety, mental health things. Maybe you lost someone and you're grieving. There's just so many different obstacles and challenges and wilderness seasons that we can be going through. And they are so painful, but they're sometimes the only thing that really change us. And then I started thinking about, okay, what was like a palace? What was like my palace before I started going through this? And I think it was just like the comfortability of my life. Like before I started going through this, I had a business that was really starting to thrive. I had some influence online. I had my friend circle. I just had a lot of comfortability, which, you know, could be like Nebuchadnezzar has his palace, he has his comfortability. And then I was brought low. But I felt God was saying we were brought low for deeper transformation. We were brought low so that God could transform us. Otherwise, nothing would have changed. We wouldn't have changed unless we were humbled. And God wants to raise us up. He wants to call us higher. But in order for that to happen, we have to change in ways not change otherwise. And God is like, he's like that really good friend who in your life, they are not an enabler. They see when you're going down the wrong path. They're that friend who sees, you know, hey, I see what you're doing. I see that you're being unfaithful to your wife and to your family. You need to snap out of it. If you keep going down the path that you are going down, you are going to destroy your family. You're going to destroy your marriage. You're going to destroy your ministry. You're going to destroy yourself. And as a friend, I'm here to say to you, you need to stop and you need to change the trajectory of your life. That's not me saying that. I feel like God is like that friend to us, right? He's not going to allow us. He's not an enabler, and he's not going to say like, oh yeah, okay, well, you know, if you're comfortable living that way, that's fine. He's not concerned about us just being comfortable. He is concerned about our character. And then look at how his demeanor changes. Look at how Nebuchadnezzar's demeanor changes, and it looks like such a deep transformation that you cannot go from what you were doing and how you were speaking to now praising and honoring God the way that he was doing. His demeanor is totally changed. And the thing is like, imagine if he had just gone through that for one day. If he had gone through that for one day where he's cast into the field, is he going to come back and start praising God like this? I don't think so. What about 2 weeks? I don't think so. What about a couple of months? Maybe he'll have a couple mindset changes, but I don't think so. But imagine years of going through something like this, and he is completely humbled. And then what's even crazier about that is, again, it says here, if you pay attention to the wording, my majesty and my splendor returned to me, and still more greatness was added on to me. Like, still more greatness was added on to me. What he had was restored greater to what he had before. And I remember in April of 2024, I was rocking my son to sleep, and I had been going through this chronic fatigue, adrenal fatigue for about 2 years at that point. And God was actually very silent during the time that I was going through this. I didn't really feel him speak on it at all, except for just comforting me. And he was answering other prayers, but he wasn't answering a prayer of healing in any way at that time. And I just felt him for the first time like break that silence in my son's room. And I don't hear the audible voice of God, or at least at this time I don't, but I felt very strongly the Holy Spirit, and I knew it was God speaking to me. And he said, you had to go through this. You had to go through this, otherwise nothing would have changed. And so at that point I felt like, okay, I'm healed. That's it. I'm healed now. And I'm still not 100% healed, but I am seeing God's hand. And anyways, I'll talk about the progress at a later point. This is just one of those situations where you would never choose to go through this type of suffering. Like, you would never choose to go into this wilderness season. You would never choose to go back into it. You would never say, hey, I want to go through that. If God gave you a heads up and said, you're going to go through this, you would be like, no, I'm not doing that. But when you look back, you realize that this was actually necessary. Necessary for the transformation, necessary to rid us of things like idols in our lives and pride and fear. Because if we continued on the way that we were going, the path could have destroyed us. Like, I just remember before I started going through this, I didn't really realize, but I always had this undercurrent of anxiety and fear. And I had just always lived like this my whole entire life since I was a child. So I didn't really think that, I didn't really notice it. It was just not something noticeable because I didn't go from being peaceful to having like an undercurrent of fear. I just always had an undercurrent of fear, and I didn't know that I was fearful. I remember I went to a healing conference and we were holding up signs of saying what we needed healing for. And I had a sign that said adrenal fatigue, and my husband had a sign that said fear and anxiety. And then the man came up to me and he said, your husband is holding a sign that says fear and anxiety. But something that you might not know is that you are also dealing with anxiety as well. It might just not be very obvious. And so that was kind of the start of me realizing that, wow, I actually do carry this like low level fear, which would keep me in fight or flight all the time. My thought life was very out of control when it came to fear. But again, it was just always in like playing in the background of my mind. So I could function, I could do everything normally. I wouldn't say that I was dealing with fear. I would actually say that I was a pretty calm person. You know, definitely I would say I wasn't dealing with anxiety. I did deal with that at a point in the past, but it definitely wasn't like an ongoing thing. And that's just one of many, many, many things that God needed to help rid me of. And it's still a process right now, but it has really been a key. It really is a key to healing as well. And so with that being said, I just want to say once again that it doesn't mean that this word is for everybody. You know, maybe you went through something awful, and I'm not saying that God put you through that. I'm just saying for those people that have been steadily and consistently going through a really, really challenging wilderness season, that I feel that God is saying that we would not have changed if we did not go through this. And this is actually all for our good and for His glory. And He has called us to really, really great things, to do great things. But for us to step into those things, we had to be changed. We had to be transformed. And we know that unless we go through something really, really difficult, that change is just not going to take place. So that's all that I wanted to share with you guys for today. Thank you so much for watching. If it does resonate with you, if this is something you felt the Lord has been speaking to you, then I would love to hear that. Just comment below and say, yes, the Lord has been speaking to me about this. And thanks so much for subscribing to our channel, for liking this video. Thank you to our Patreons, I really appreciate it. And of course, I always say in here that we actually have a semester of NowBloom Academy that just began. It only just began about a week ago by the time you see this video. So we're going to keep the enrollment open for the rest of September. We are now actually only running live cohorts once a year in September, and the rest of the time it is self-paced. So if you're looking to receive your own inner healing, become a Christian life coach, or use it for ministry, use the tools for the relationships in your life, then I will put the links up here. And we also have another course that is available as well for inner healing that Coach Misha is running. So that's something else that's also available to you. And yeah, that's it for now. So thank you so much, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.